Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Lauren Pastrana in for Jim DeFede. It's a new year and a new legislative session is just around the corner. When Florida lawmakers convene in March, they'll tackle a host of issues, and many are hoping property insurance reform is high on the agenda. Jeff Brandes is a former state senator who served in Tallahassee from 2010 to 2022. He's now the founder and president of Florida Policy Project, a resource for policy leaders who want to make a positive impact in Florida. We spoke about the future of property insurance in Florida and his legislative wish list for 2025. Senator Brandes, thanks so much for being with us today. Now, it's a new year, but many Floridians are still picking up the pieces from just a catastrophic hurricane season last year. Even though, thankfully, South Florida did not take a direct hit, we can expect to be directly impacted by potential increases in our property insurance. So many people will be watching and waiting to see if the legislature tackles the topic in the upcoming session. So what, if any, changes can we expect this year?
Well, I think on a rate basis, I think you'll see a stabilization of rates. I don't think you're going to see rates go down dramatically, but I don't think you're going to see them go up dramatically either. These storms, while severe for those that were impacted, Helene was mostly a water event, and so that will affect the National Flood Insurance Program and not really addressing the major insurers of Florida. Milton, on the other hand, was a major event for Florida, and so I think it will firm up rates, but I don't think you'll see them radically increase.
Okay, so not radically increasing, certainly a good thing, but a lot of people have been dealing with, extra costs at the grocery store. Everything seems to be more expensive. So they're hoping for at least, a little bit of relief somewhere, maybe in property insurance. Why not? Why is it such a tricky issue to try and bring that back down here in Florida?
Well, just like milk and eggs have gone up, the pricing for materials for properties has gone up as well as well as labor costs. So, insurers are dealing with inflation just as well as everybody else is dealing with it, and the cost of rebuilding properties has gone up as well. So I think that's where I think the rate stabilization piece comes into play. I think if the legislature focuses on anything this year, what they should focus on is Citizens property insurance. Citizens has almost $500 billion of risk on their books, and yet less than $10 billion in cash. So it's that's an area where I think the legislature should focus on. Will it? I don't know. But I think if I was going to advise the legislature to focus on one area of property insurance, it would be on reducing the size of the liability of Citizens property insurance.
All right, we're going to get to Citizens in just a moment, but it's been a few years since there's been major action on insurance reform here in Florida, and the goal of the previous action actually brought new companies into Florida, perhaps relieving a little bit of that strain on Citizens. How has that helped? Can we expect to see more companies coming in and writing policies here in Florida again?
I think you will. Look, many of the companies that have joined in Florida are actually existing companies that started new companies. While that's a benefit to everybody, what you really need is new capital. And I think you're still kind of in the early phases of seeing new capital deployed in Florida. We've had a handful of companies that were truly new companies start in Florida, but it would be the most encouraging thing that we could see is to see more market entrance into Florida. It's what the market needs, and that's ultimately what's going to drive the pricing pressure to bring rates down. Understand 40 cents of every insurance dollar is actually sent offshore to reinsurers. This is to Bermuda and to London to cover the reinsurance cost of essentially of major catastrophic events. What we've seen, though, is some softening in pricing amongst reinsurers, which we think is incredibly positive. The reinsurers did really well last year. That hopefully will translate to lower prices or at least stabilization in prices amongst reinsurance.
Let's go back to Citizens here. So first things first, for people who might not understand it, whenever we mention Citizens, we say, insurer of last resort. And many of us, myself included, at one point were dropped from our regular property insurance carriers and basically forced into Citizens. And then within the last year, I got that letter from Citizens saying, hey, we found someone else who will insure you for a higher premium, but we're going to, pass you off there. So there's been a lot of back and forth with a lot of people, and people might just genuinely be confused. What does this mean for them? Is there anything that they can do if Citizens is passing them around and just, drops them into another company? Should people just be shopping around at this point? Is that an option for people?
Absolutely, they should be shopping around. They should be looking at price, but also terms of their policies. Citizens policy is a pretty bare bones policy, and oftentimes they can find a better policy at a competitive price to Citizens. But Citizens is now required to transition individuals. If an insurance company comes to Citizens and says, we're willing to take that policy at Citizens rates or up to 20% above Citizens rates, those policies are no longer eligible for Citizens and must be transitioned out. That was part of a law passed 2 or 3 years ago. So we're seeing that become into full effect now, and we've seen a lot of takeouts out of Citizens. And I think overall that's very positive. Citizens really, if you look at the health of the Florida marketplace, what you really want to look at is Citizens growing or shrinking? And right now we're seeing Citizens begin to shrink, which I think is an incredibly positive sign for the overall marketplace. Citizens can't be sitting on 1.3 million policies and $500 billion in risk. That is just something that could potentially bankrupt the state of Florida and frankly, the taxpayers of the state, because we're the ones who ultimately back Citizens.
Okay, so that brings me to House Bill, I believe, 13, sponsored by State Representative Hillary Castle here of Broward County, to make Citizens available to all property owners in Florida, but to only cover windstorm damage. To begin, how would that actually work? What are the chances of a bill like that passing? It seems like similar ideas in the past have not gone anywhere, and it seems like that would grow the footprint of Citizens in Florida, would it not?
It would radically expand the footprint of Citizens in Florida. It's not an idea that I would support. I don't think Citizens supports. I don't think the governor would support that idea. Listen, we can't be, we can't be everything to everyone. And unfortunately, that would expand Citizens' exposure from $500 billion to well over $1 trillion. That would be something I don't think that the market could support. I don't think Citizens could support it. And at some juncture, you're writing checks that the state just simply can't cash. And so I think we need to let the private market work. It can work. It is going to be working better than it currently is. We're seeing the market that's getting healthy. Imagine this is a patient that went through extreme surgery 2 years ago, and it's now kind of getting on its feet, and it's starting to walk again. That's where the Florida property insurance market is. The best thing we can do is focus on the major issues at Citizens Property Insurance. There are some minor tweaks I think we can do in the property insurance world to make it better for customers and consumers. I think we should focus on those issues, but I don't think we need to take it back and put it in surgery again.
Interesting comparison there, because I'm sure some people might say it's been a long and painful rehab of the Florida property insurance market here in the state. So hopefully, though, they are getting closer and closer to that recovery. Incoming State House Speaker Daniel Perez has said, quote, "I don't want to lose the next generation of talent to another state because the affordability in Florida has gotten too high." So we're talking property insurance, just regular housing costs, all the different implications beyond just the current homeowners. This could influence whether young professionals actually choose to set down roots here in Florida or move elsewhere. How big of an issue could that be down the road to, the health and well-being and prosperity of the future of Florida?
I think overall affordability is the #1 issue in the state of Florida right now. And I think the challenge that the legislature has is they don't have a real housing plan. They don't have a statewide housing plan to address, actually adding more housing supply at scale. We've heard about Live Local. Live Local is a small piece of the overall puzzle, but it's like having one piece of the puzzle and not knowing what the other pieces even are, or even what the picture that you actually want to generate looks like. This is where Florida is. The Florida Policy Project, a nonprofit that I'm involved with, has put forth best practices for the legislature to consider. Things like smaller lot sizes, allowing for accessory dwelling units, getting rid of parking minimums, allowing for upzoning. Those are the things that will actually drive housing supply. And while insurance is always going to be a component of overall affordability, frankly, right now, what we're dealing with is a supply problem when we have incredible amount of demand coming to Florida. People want to live in this great state, but we have a reduction in supply of housing. We're just simply not building enough, and frankly, not building enough of what people need, which isn't $1 million homes. It's that $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 home, or frankly, that $200,000 accessory dwelling unit that allows people to get in for $2,000 a month.
You mentioned the Florida Policy Project. It has a mission of positively influencing the quality of life for Florida residents and guests. So we want to know, what do you consider the biggest issues, the non-negotiables that need to be addressed during this upcoming session to make life better for everyone here in Florida?
The #1 thing we can do is focus on housing. I think housing has become the critical issue of the state of Florida, and mostly on the affordability side of that. Again, those big ideas, those best practices in housing, which requires Florida to come up with a housing policy, really a a set of ideas that we can build a strategy towards. Right now, I don't think that exists. In transportation, I think that our proposal is that Florida become the leader in the country in timing its signals the right way. Everybody has kind of come up to a stoplight and found that, you know what, there's nobody else here. Why is this light still red? Florida is really not considered a leader in traffic signalization. It's an area that I think we can continue to focus on. On property insurance, I think there's a number of things we can be doing, but frankly, we should be focusing on citizens property insurance, reducing the size and scope and the liability of citizens property insurance. There are a variety of other challenges that Florida faces. One that's often not talked about is our prison system. And I think that's an area where the legislature should spend a lot of time. The KPMG, a global consulting firm, did a study on the Florida prison system just a year ago and said we need to spend $12 billion over the next 20 years on the prison system.
Wow, certainly things that we will be watching over the course of the next session and well beyond here at CBS Miami. Senator Brandes, thank you so much for your time and your insight.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Up next, a look at a new state law that could have kids logging off social media, what parents and a psychiatrist are saying about it.